Evening all. Well, I say evening all. Evening Hibbo and anyone else that's found us when they were looking for something else more interesting to do. We were actually just having a conversation about the potential of Jerusalem artichokes to give you extreme flatulence. So if anyone's interested in that instead of FPL, then that's the kind of niche I'm aiming for. That and 19th century literature. So if you've seen the thumbnail about Thomas Hardy and so on, well, thank you for putting up with me. But I'm here this evening with Danny, if he doesn't mind joining me whenever he's ready. He's busily sharing away to try and get a few punters in and sort us for the current game week. How you keeping, Danny?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, I was just saying hello to Hibbo in the chat. It's quite funny, nice. Says one in the chat, and Hibbo is good. Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. I feel a bit fresher than I did last time we spoke. I've had a nice healthy week. Yeah, I've not had a drink all week, which is good. As you say, I can smell things again, and
that reminds me.
I've got a water here at the moment. And yeah, it was another sort of just okay-ish week on FPL. Not very exciting at the moment, is it? So it was all right though. You can't complain. So like small. I know you don't look at your ranks and your arrows and stuff, but got a smallish green arrow which you can't complain about. So
I don't need to look at my rank to know how bad it's gone lately. See the truth. Danny will know this, but I managed to pick an ideal week to. I managed to pick probably the only two possible replacements I could have got for outgoing players that failed whilst the outgoing ones both returned. So I sold Watkins for Jimenez, and Jimenez, as you know, if he had longer toenails, everything would have been fine. Actually, Hibbo owns Jimenez as well, so he'll be on my side in this one. Carving out a little bit of money for double game week frenetics in a few weeks' time and that sort of thing, and I got Bruno in for Rodgers again, just to make a little bit of room, and it gives me a nice step up because I'm going to hopefully put Sarr into Embuemo in a few weeks' time. I mean, to be honest with you, it was a little bit tempting earlier when I heard the news, but we can talk about that because actually it doesn't sound quite as bad now. But yeah, it's not been an amazing week, if I'm honest with you. I don't even think I've posted my team up. I'm a proper kind of sado, so yeah, that's how bad it's gone. I've forgotten to do that because I was just happy to ignore it, but there we go. So yeah, interesting things to talk about anyway. So we've got a little bit of Ahmad at the start. That won't take too long. A bit of Chris Wood love, just because why not? I think Danny's got some exciting racy pictures. We can share those. I'm imagining Chris Wood kind of sort of bare chested, sort of doing some sort of lumberjack or weightlifting or something exciting. It's not really about FPL, this isn't. But yeah, no, of course.
I've always got sexy pictures of Chris Wood on my phone. Look.
That's what a real man looks like.
What a guy.
There we go. The slayer of I probably shouldn't slag off analytics. We're sending a lot of people our way. Thank you, Pete. You're welcome here. We're neither one thing nor the other. I think that's probably the fair way of putting it. That and a little bit of planning for double game weeks and blanks, that sort of thing, but mostly fixtures. It's going to be, I'll say it's shorter. It's a bit more off the cuff tonight. What actually happens, well, we'll find out later on. Danny, I'm going to rely on you heavily for the first part because you know what you're talking about when it comes to this. Are you grimacing about the fact that Ahmad banged in his 20 points last night? Or I'm guessing for you, you can't really be angry at him, really?
No, I can't be angry at him, can I? I love him. It was a pretty painful watch. Watching United last night. In fact, it was excruciating. So he saved us, which is great. What a guy. From an FPL point of view, it was a little bit painful. Yeah, I mean, you see the odd team in a minute. It's kind of amazing. I don't really know who owns him. I mean, I've checked through all the mini leagues. It's pretty fascinating because it says he's like 20% owned. And I can't really find anyone. I know there's one or two on Twitter, but I can't really find anyone who owns him. So, but yeah, what a guy. He started right wing back, which is the team that I wanted to see for a while, to be honest. I still think that at the moment, that's probably our best team or our best setup, because I think Fernandes needs to be in the front three, and I think Garnacho can probably only really be in the front three. I think he spent a bit of time at left wing back last night, and he's fine there as well. But he's very good up front. I mean, it's not that Ahmad isn't brilliant in the front three. It's just that he's very, very good at right wing back, as well as being, good in the front three. And I think so I quite like him in that position. And that's the good thing about Ahmad is, where you've got potential worries with Bruno in terms of positional stuff. He went to sort of the number 6 last night fairly early on, which is pretty frustrating as an owner. And he still gets forward a bit. But with Ahmad, he's either going to be playing right wing back, where he's very effective anyway and he can still get returns for FPL, or he's going to play in the front three and he's pretty nailed. So yeah, I mean, what a guy. I was just like, he's also really interesting as a player because he's really cold. Which is great. It's the sort of thing you want to see in a fantasy pick. He doesn't seem remotely phased. He's got one of those looks. He's got almost, like, for want of a better word, slightly psychopathic eyes. There's something just not quite there, and he's looking and he doesn't really seem phased at all. So you don't really see any deviation, and that's why every time he sort of gets a chance, he just finishes it, he just buries it. So yeah. Looks great pick now.
Yeah, I've seen a fair few people, make that move kind of immediately last night. There's a few people who I have my list who are usually very quick to click a button at any opportunity, and they managed to resist it actually. So that's something. I'm guessing for anyone watching who's tempted to do the downgrade, you would advise against that as you're the United guy. I'll rely on you on this one, but you wouldn't be going down that avenue.
No, I wouldn't downgrade. No, absolutely not. I still think, and obviously this could come back to bite me, and people won't like it, but I still think Bruno's the better pick. It's much closer than it was. I mean, that was the other thing as a Bruno owner. It was like, it's all ifs and buts. It's all nonsense. But when he was through, he got through when we were still 1-0 down, or was it 1-1 or what? I think it was 1-0 down. And he actually got the first big chance, and from the number 6 position, which just shows how desperate he is and to sort of get up and down. But when he got through, he normally finishes those. Obviously, tried to think the keeper, it was a decent saving them, but it was so close to scoring. And then obviously, it's Ahmad who gets the hat trick. But no, I think wait and see how it goes for the next few games. Brighton.
Yeah. There's sorry, blipped out for a minute there. There is someone who I know that people are going to be a little bit worried about around the similar price, who they might be moving from Ahmad. Sorry, from them to Ahmad later on, but we'll come to that in a few slides time. But yeah, I suppose just a quick sort of future planning type thing is someone who's probably quite interesting again if you don't go there now, which I think is fair enough. There is a little eventuality, isn't there, with game week 29 on the horizon. We'll look at those fixtures in a bit. Well, actually, I'll just skip forward very quickly now, just have a quick peek. But when you do look at this here and you see that United, of course, have their game away at Leicester, that there's a good opportunity there. I suspect he's going to be extremely heavily owned that week because, one way or another, people on free hits or otherwise, it's an easy way to cover that game off. So that looks like a tricky one, perhaps not to own for, but that's a little way off at this point. We just have a quick love. We don't really need to talk about him too much because what a man. You already shared the sexy pictures and that sort of thing. But I've seen a few this week doing the Jackson to Wood move. It's quite an interesting one actually this week because obviously there's a lot of uncertainty within the kind of Chelsea camp, and I suppose there's a little bit of a question mark as to whether Chris Wood's a captaincy option this week. Do you buy into that?
No, no. You know me, I'm pretty boring. Mostly boring when it comes to captaincies. I mean, I wouldn't captain Chris Wood. He's obviously an incredible player, but doesn't seem to be getting multiple returns or anything like that. Forest don't really set up in that way, I suppose. Once they take the lead, they're quite a defensive side, aren't they? So I certainly wouldn't be captaining him because obviously, he has been overperforming his stats as well, massively so far this season. He's just on a, he is a brilliant player. He is a brilliant finisher. He is also on a hot streak. Kind of just putting away single chances. So no, I wouldn't consider him as a captain, but I wouldn't be I wouldn't be selling Jackson for Wood this week. Not a chance. No chance. I watched the Chelsea highlights and I saw bits of the game, and he's a superb player, Jackson, isn't he? And he was brilliant, and he was unlucky as well. I know he's not the best finisher, and he must be frustrating own, but it's also just a bit unlucky. You know, he didn't really do anything wrong with that header. He got it down. It was a brilliant save.
I think owners have been extremely unlucky lately. I'll be honest with you. My planned move ahead of last week originally was meant to be Jackson. You know, it was meant to be him in that week. Things have changed since then in terms of circumstances, double game week announcements, and all the rest of it. But nevertheless, I think extremely unlucky. I think it would be difficult to buy in from this point. I think it's fair to say on Jackson, but I mean, I'm sure there's almost no one who's doing that anyway. But he certainly looked pretty good to me. I wouldn't be considering selling on. Just, I mean, as viewers that do get around to us will probably know, I'm probably the little more emotive one of the two here. Danny's a ruthless cold killer. He's the kind of no one will agree with this, but you know, in terms of bonds, actually, technically the best one in terms of representing the books is Timothy Dalton, because he's actually kind of a blown out killer. Like, he's hollowed out, he's got no emotions left. He's just, you know, he's just living on those kind of instincts and that sort of thing. And Danny's that version of an FPL manager, whereas me, a bit flighty, I think it's fair to say. But anyway, what I was going to say on that, just an emotive response here, is that Chris Wood, I like him too much to ever captain him. I don't want to be upset with him. That's my reason for not captaining Chris Wood, is I don't want to have anything to blame him for as well. There we are. Hello this evening as well to I'm guessing James Lambert in the chat there. I wonder whether that's Jossie's real name. But if not, if I'm wrong, James Lambert, please tell me.
Oh yeah,
I'm being an idiot. I was just thinking, that's the professional version of Jossie. Perhaps that is the case. I don't know. But evening all anyway as well. I've got a very bad quality gassy beer again, Danny. I'm really letting myself down lately. This is probably even gassier than the one last week.
Well, it's got to be better than that dark Christmas ale that you had.
Christmas beer. I don't know. I know it sounds nice, but
that was a low point for this pod.
It's not Jossie, in which case, James, ignore me, and good health to you. Feel free to drop a question in the chat or something if you like. But very kind of you to join us this evening.
Cheers, James.
We welcome not just old followers, the sort of 5 or 10 out there, new people as well. Although I believe we're going live against a few other things, which is always the case realistically for us. I mean, it's only the second time we've been live, and it's because I'm basically inept and can't work out how to do things. But maybe that. But yeah, FPL amateur on Blue Sky, nice, and Farron Collins as well, cool. All right, on to I think one of the big debates this week is it's a bit of an annoying day for press conferences. I spoke to our good friend Stu, FPL Pep Talk earlier on, and he's of the view that I know there's a few managers like this, that he'd prefer just to shut his team down on Thursday night, not listen to press conferences, and just go in blissfully ignorant. And I admire that kind of thinking. I can't do it, obviously, because it's just, no, I can't do that. But, I can see why you might be tempted. But one of the things is Chelsea today, really kind of quite an annoying set of press conference reactions. Same with Ismail Assar, where you don't get any clarity whatsoever. But it's quite big news, really, because it's just enough probably to put people off of Palmer captaincy. I'm trying to think what the injury was. It's an ankle injury, isn't it? So to speak. Well, I mean, that's what they said. And then Enzo Fernandez, fatigue or muscle related, and then Ismail Assar, I think it was a sort of a light kind of hamstring issue. But he was training today. In fact, again, our other friend Praz has just shared some images of that. So maybe not quite such a problem. But any thoughts on all this, Danny? Does it put you off anything particular? I know you own 2 of those.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see my team in a bit. It probably makes I've got a slight decision to make, really, in terms of starting or benching Enzo, because it's a very good fixture, obviously. But we'll come to that. So that might make that decision a little bit easier. But, it's kind of a silly one because it's going to dictate so much for so many people. And obviously, Palmer's like the top captain on review, or was. He's not anymore. There'll be a mix of people. Lots of people wanted to captain Palmer, fine. For that reason, it's a kind of justified reason to go against like Mo Salah and the top EO captains, and that won't happen now for the majority of people because you just can't take that bigger risk on captaincy with the minutes. But I obviously I think that it's just nothing for all of them. And the quote that I saw was just kind of like, I think Cole missed today. Took a bit of a knock on the ankle in the last game. Same for Enzo, same for Lavia, same for someone else or something. And he's like, it's like 4. We've got 3 or 4 of them. And it just sounded a bit like, I'm a bit annoyed about that our players took a bit of a kicking last night. And now they're not training today or yesterday or whatever, and the game's not till Monday. So there was no hint of it being anything actually serious. So obviously my guess is that all of them are fine and probably start. So and then Sarr as well. Yeah, you just said there's been images that he's trained today anyway, and the first quote was there's a small question mark. But again, there's people have got a lot of very close, tight decisions because people's squads. There's been a sort of period now for a good few weeks where obviously teams are aligning because nobody's got Haaland anymore. Everyone's got lots of money. The fixtures have been pretty clear for people, and there's not really been any injuries that I can think of, or major injuries. Correct me if I'm wrong. So everyone's just sort of stayed fit. It's all kind of quite predictable. So all the teams are quite similar, and everyone's got really good benches. And all you need is for someone to have a slight worry, and for A, that to justify you changing your team a little bit, but B, a lot of people just want to find something different, want to get on the next thing before. And obviously Ahmad's the one at the moment. It's, still relatively low ownership. People want an excuse to try something different, to try and get ahead, because it is quite frustrating. I hate it at the moment when it's like this, when you sort of, that you're not going to get a big green arrow, not necessarily a big red arrow, and you're just sort of going through the motions. So I quite like the fact that we've got these doubts. It shakes things up a bit, but then at the same time, it pretty much takes captaincy out of the equation now. I mean, a few people probably go Isak, but I think the vast majority will go for Mo. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think it's going to be significantly higher ownership for Salah than it would have been. I'll be honest with you. I think I was on Salah anyway, so it didn't really make a great deal of difference to me. I don't know actually what I'd be interested to see, because you must have been quite close on this, I would have thought.
Yeah, I did. I had Palmer as bus captain as it was, and I was probably going to go for Palmer, but I was close and I wasn't sure because we'll talk about captaincy, I'm sure, but Mo's just, well, we can talk about it now, but it's like even at the end of that Forest game, Forest is such a good side defensively, and every time Liverpool just wear people down because they're just so, not only they're so good and so organised, but they do it in such a way that they don't get tired. So you keep seeing it in like 60, 70 minutes. It doesn't matter who they're playing against. They could have scored 2-3 goals easily against Forest away, which is seriously something. And obviously Mo had one cleared off the line. He had one saved in the top corner. He's just on the end of everything at the moment. And obviously Brentford are nowhere near as good defensively. So whilst I had it on Palmer, and I probably would have been happy to go there because of the lower ownership, and Palmer's amazing, and it's Monday night home to Wolves. Part of you just thinks, God, Salah probably is still a little bit more of a sure thing.
Yeah, as you say, they were still looking pretty fresh, as you say. I mean, they won't come up against the man mountain that's Milankovic every week, right? He blocks everything. The man can batter anyone. But yeah, no, that seems right. It's a particularly frustrating week for. I mean, all of these players here create a problem for me. I in some ways would quite like all of them to be out, because it's real advantage to me if everyone was out, and it's not going to happen, obviously, because I had a situation where I could easily have hit bench boost this week. I know lots of people will see it and for good reason will wonder why, but there's a little bit of an opportunity there. There was just enough of a good situation where everyone was definitely going to play It was looking pretty good, but it's frustrating now. Sarr, it's an interesting one because I'm probably only going to be holding for Brentford, and that's it next week. So I've got a move lined up to get rid of him after that. I know that most people will understandably hold on. He actually looked quite good in the last game. He was quite creative. I don't know if you watched the highlights of that, but it's quite interesting that the roles look like they've tweaked a little bit. But Sarr was providing quite a lot of assist threat. And to be honest with you, when I've seen him before, I've never really been that impressed by his kind of ball playing, his creative passing, that side of things. But actually, I mean, maybe it's just Leicester, right? But there was an element of that looking pretty good there as well. So
I mean,
so, yeah,
I did notice that quite a lot actually, because it did seem to be different. You don't know if it's just a matchup, and maybe I've not seen enough recently, but I actually thought that whilst his creative play was better, he was certainly the deepest of the three for long periods. That's what it looked like anyway. So I was pretty happy about that as an Eze owner, because it kind of looked like they kept it looked like they were sort of switching back into a 4-4-2 at times, either in possession or in transition. I mean, Eze was right up there with Mateta, and sort of said all along, Eze sort of hangs around a lot, and I like the fact that he's higher up the pitch because Sarr takes up the defenders and sort of if he breaks through, he plays the cross, and it's potentially Eze or Mateta on the end of it. So there was two sides to it. I sort of watching it in the first 60, 70 minutes, I thought, actually, I'm quite happy here as an Eze owner. Like, Sarr looks good football-wise, but he's much deeper. But then again, I can't remember what minute it was, but obviously, and they were 2-0 up or whatever, but Mateta and Eze both came off, and Sarr doesn't. He's the one getting 90 minutes, because he looks like a physical specimen, doesn't he? And if you're the one getting 90 minutes, that's massive. So,
yeah, his record for 90s over the last couple of months is obscene. He's barely missed a minute, I think. Certainly in the time that anyone's had any real interest in him. So it's really quite surprising. But as you say, yeah, it's. But I will probably be looking to move that slot on to back to Brian as soon as I'm able. So that will come in game week 24, unless something insane happens, like all of the other Liverpool attackers drop out and it's obvious who's going to play. But I think realistically, I think we know what's going to happen there. Shout out to our friend FPL Frenchie, who brought in Jota midweek. Poor chap. But he might be on a wild card, actually, strange enough. Okay, I think we can leave this one there. But yeah, it causes some problems. I think it's fair to say, though, maybe you're like me on this one. I'm not. If I had to put money on it, I think all three will play, which will frustrate me even more because I can't press a bench boost in this scenario. But
so you're saying, will you start Sarr? That's the question for a lot of people.
Well, okay. So in my scenario, on the bench behind him is Hall against Bournemouth, which I probably still expect Bournemouth to score there. I mean, they are a very, as you know, they're very able side and very rarely blank, as far as I recall. Munoz, who becomes worse if Sarr is, as we discussed this before. I mean, they play well together, and it's not quite such a strength of threat if Nketiah or Daichi Kamada are playing. So that's another kind of knock-on factor. And Enzo's on the bench as well. So it's a horrible week. But the thing with Enzo, as you know, is that it's the Lavia factor as well. So Lavia was one of the other doubts. And it's very hard to know how to read in that. He went off, I think it was on sort of 53, 54 minutes. But he had a booking. I think he was blowing out. Anyway, so they were quite keen to get someone on. So it's just hard to read. I wouldn't put anyone off using any of these players this week, but it's just doing it without cover would be quite tricky. So yeah, very difficult to know.
On the Lavia thing as well,
yeah,
there seems a very reasonable possibility that it's Reece James anyway that's going to start right back. So if people are sort of basing the Enzo pick on Lavia, I don't know, keep an eye on that and keep an eye on Neil's predictions, I suppose. But I think it may well be Reece James at right back.
Yeah.
But yeah,
how late, by the way, Neil changes those predictions? I'm just interested. I'm curious. Does he change them on Saturday morning?
Yeah, he'll be doing it. He'll be doing it. He does it right through the night, and he leaves the teams that are the most sort of contentious or the ones that people are most interested in till last, because he wants to make sure it's right. So, most of them aren't updated yet, but most of them will be updated by like 1 a.m. So he does a hell of a good job, because his Fridays and Saturdays must be a nightmare. Or the
man is an absolute animal, and a gentleman from the sounds of it as well.
Yeah, he's a class guy. Yeah, but
actually, do follow it. So he's I can't remember the exact, but it's Sconto Rigger, isn't it? On both of the platforms, I think, particularly X. I can't remember whether he's on Blue Sky. I'm sure he is. But yeah.
He always pulls through that. I just want to say on the just quickly on the on the SAR images, just I don't know, but obviously the last thing we heard was there was a question mark. So it seems strange to me to say if the press conference was today. I've not been following this because I don't own SAR, but if the press conference was today and he said there was a question mark, then it seems strange for the it could well have happened in training. In terms of in reference to these pictures that have been shared about.
Don't mess with me.
No, but so. Just the fact that Palace have shared a load of pictures with players saying they're all smiles, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that they're all fit. If he's got a question mark over his ankle, it's probably happened in training. Anyway, I'm sure he's fine. But all I'm saying is I wouldn't be looking at those pictures in training going, oh, right, he's fine, right? Definitely.
Yeah. No, I see what you mean. It's not a sell, right? But yeah, I know what you mean, yeah. It's an unenviable decision in a situation like mine, but we can come to that later on. So planning, it's worth talking about this because I think the last time we talked, Danny, I don't think we did have the information on Liverpool double game week. So that's new for us, but of course everyone has known about it for a good sort of 5 or 6 days now, probably. It's not much to talk about in the immediate sense, but just in terms of your planning, I mean, you've got, I think it's something like 4 transfers stacked up, haven't you? Like a sort of, again, ruining the potential of the pod to make exciting moves, etc. You're stashing them away, squirreling them away like sort of nuts through winter and such. Go on then. Tell us about your plans for this. Do you like the look of it? Does it have any chip potential for you? That double in 24. Are you looking to bring anyone in? You've got 2. Oh, actually, this is 29 on the screen, isn't it? We're talking about 24 first, anyway. Yeah. So you're set with 2 players at the moment in Trent and Salah. What's your plan going ahead?
Well, I don't have concrete plans as usual. I like to keep things open and keep things flexible, and that's as you say, I'm sort of trying to maximize flexibility with transfers at the moment. So I think I've got 3 at the moment. So I'm rolling again this week, so I'll have 4 next week, and should have 5 the week after, because I don't imagine I'll make a transfer next week either.
Scoundrel.
I know. I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm a little bit confused, but also enjoying this all this to and fro in and about which Liverpool attacker, and Gakpo's the one and Diaz is not the one, or could Jota be fit? Because obviously, you know what I'm like. I like players who play, so I'm not that interested in those Liverpool attackers. Obviously, if Gakpo carries on playing every game, 90 every game, then he could be the one, and he could be the standout. I don't think I'd even remotely consider the other 2. At the moment, obviously things can change pretty quickly. I don't think, I'm just trying to be black and white and ruthless here. And I know it's not as simple as this, but for me, Jota's not even a consideration. Diaz is not a consideration. And I don't really like Gakpo. But because looking at 24, to me, a lot of teams are pretty similar at the moment, and it makes sense to me that you're talking about either getting an attacker with slightly dodgy minutes at best to replace what are all very good attackers who've all got very good fixtures in that week. Have I got anything open? Let's just see if that works. Anyway, we'll come back to that. No, that's obviously reset. But in 24, what are the fixtures? Let me get it up in a second. So we're talking about basically selling good attackers with probably good fixtures to get in a minutes risk attacker. Whereas for me, you could just go for one of the defenders, who are definitely going to play, and are replacing just first of all just defenders. in terms of the cheaper defenders, that it's not like you're going to be massively worried about a big haul from these guys, whether even if it's Hall or Munoz and Robinson or Fulham defenders and whatnot. So if you look at 24, Hall has got Fulham at home. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, by the way, because I don't know if anything's changed or whatnot. But Hall's got Fulham at home, which is okay. It's decent. They are at home. To be fair, that's okay. Munoz has got Man United away, which is a bad fixture. Leicester have got Everton away. Sorry, not Leicester. But what am I looking for? Fulham. Yeah, so Fulham have got Newcastle away. So a lot of people got Fulham defenders. That's a bad fixture.
Arsenal, City.
Arsenal got City. So it sort of kind of makes logical sense to me that you would replace a defender with, say, a Liverpool defender like Konate or Van Dijk or whatever you want to do. Obviously, there's Alisson as well. But Everton have got a decent double as well, haven't they? So it's Leicester at home and Liverpool. What is it? Leicester at home, Liverpool away or something?
Both home.
Oh, okay. Both home. So, yeah, nice. So, for me, I'm kind of thinking that the best triple up is just for the reason I've said about getting really good players, really good fixtures up front versus the defenders. For me, the triple up is double Liverpool defence and Salah. This is my early thoughts. And then get on Pickford, who's got a good double. They've got new manager. Leicester at home could easily be a clean. I think they've got pretty good. In fact, they've got very good fixtures to follow anyway, and even precede. Everton have got. Well, they've got not very good actually, but they're decent enough. They've got Crystal Palace, then United, then Brentford, then they've got Wolves in 28 and West Ham in 29. So, Pickford can easily come in, and then I'm just quite interested to see who else emerges from Everton in terms of potential cheap midfielders, whether McNeil comes back or whether it's because the cheaper guys who don't make much, don't change much in terms of your squad and your structure, and don't mean you have to sell much.
It's interesting you say that because that's one of the reasons it did affect a decision in a very minor way last week, but that Enzo spot could easily be McNeil.
Exactly.
And I don't hate that, strangely enough. In a weird way, I prefer that to... Well, I'm trying to think... Okay, so my example, we'll come to this with teams later on, is I have Sarr, and he's got Manchester United away in 24. And I know lots of people would look at that, and I'm not closing the door on the potential for a Liverpool midfielder, but the much more likely scenario for me is that I use that transfer on Mbeumo, and I continue to build around that. So it would be something like an Alisson. It's possible. I think Konate is more likely than the more than Van Dijk just because of prices, and then as you say, McNeil, and to a lesser extent, I don't know enough about him to put big money on this, but I know that God, you have to remind me. Is it Njai? It is Njai. It's such an exciting pick that I can't remember his name, but even that, in a sense, is a little bit more viable to me than one or two of the others, just because I don't want it to change the structure I have too much. But at the moment, if I had to put money on it, I think it's almost a banker that a keeper is going to get switched. I don't know which one for. It could be either, really, and then it'll be building around that. So there's a few reasons for it. I have looked at the Pickford Fabianski rotation, by the way, and it's not bad. So I think you can definitely go down that route if you want to. It's not too bad at all. I mean, we can probably work it out pretty quickly here, to be honest with you. But assuming you jump on in 24 for Everton there, etc., Fabianski covers you quite nicely for a few weeks here and there. He's got Leicester in 27, which is quite handy. A home game in 28. Those are during the games where you might use him. So yeah, it's not too bad. And of course, the other thing is Fabianski plays in 29, so I think that's really handy. And he plays against Everton, so you potentially have a choice of keepers that week if you Pickford. Whereas Raya, we don't know for certain whether he's available in 29 yet. As you can see from there, it looks likely that he will be, but we still don't know on that yet. But yeah, I'm very, again, classic FPL. I say classic, we haven't been around for that long. Last resort, but I can't really see the likelihood of a Liverpool attacker being added to Salah at this point in time. Just doesn't really work particularly.
It's going to be, obviously lots going to be dictated by how many transfers people have got. I mean, I'll definitely be getting Burmo in as well, by the way, in probably in 24. It's going to be interesting because it's going to be a question of how greedy people feel, and how scared people feel and what they want, what they feel like they have to get, because transfers are going to be so important to carry through 24 into 29 to give you the option. If you set on free hit, fair enough, but no matter whether you set on free hit or not, and I know every pod's saying this and it's not particularly interesting, but transfers are ridiculously valuable and ridiculously important, and you really want to have as many as you can at the moment, and for the foreseeable, because obviously, never mind everything else and all the chaos and all the chips that are to come, but the Assman chip just means you need twice as many transfers, because you're going to probably need to make transfers on that chip and players at the same time. And
just very quickly on the Assman chip, I think one thing that's really frustrated me looking at this and wanting to talk about this is this arbitrary game week 24 beginning for the Assman chip, because Liverpool obviously much more appealing if you brought it forward a week. I know that's it's not going to happen, so there's no point talking about it. But obviously, who is it? Isn't it Ipswich the week before?
Yeah,
so they would have had Ipswich home, Bournemouth away, Everton away, Wolves at home, and I think I'd have been quite happy with that. But it's just the fact that it locks in another transfer. I don't think. I mean, I could actually afford it if I avoided Mbuemo, but I can't really see me doing it. So yeah, are you likely to use a chip in 24?
Yeah, I'm going to use triple captain likely. Obviously I would have preferred it to go into 25. I can't say I'm wild about the 24, and obviously you know how the schedule looks. I mean, it's good in a way, because obviously Liverpool have got 2 games in between their 2 fixtures in the double. They play the EFL Cup semi-final and the FA Cup in between the 2 games, but the schedule falls quite nicely, such that something like, if they've qualified for the top 8 in Europe, which looks very, very likely, they should be able to rest the Champions League just before the first game of the double. The first team should play in the first game of the double, and then they should all probably rest in the FA Cup as well, because I would imagine they'll put a strong team out. So it works well in terms of on paper who should play and being able to be reliable. But obviously, it's not nice that we've got a cup semi-final in the middle, because it's just another game where players could get injured.
You say that there is a contrary thought to it, though, isn't there? In a sense, if you, I mean, it sounds like you're about 90% avoiding attackers anyway, and in a sense, that's quite a handy scenario, isn't it? Because it's just that enough uncertainty that if people were buying in, they could be getting themselves into a trap, etc. So it could be quite handy in some ways. So fingers crossed if you are backing the defence there as well. Do you like those fixtures from a defensive point of view, or is it more just because you're banking on the minutes?
Well, no, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you've got to like Everton away under Moyes. Actually, thinking about it. I mean, Bournemouth away is never a great fixture. It's possible, but Liverpool are so good that they set up in different ways. The manager's so good; he knows the systems to play against certain teams. First of all, so I don't think you should inspect the fixtures as they are too much. Sometimes you just have to look at it and go, "This is the best team in the country. The manager's really good." So any game can be a clean, which obviously I know we know that, but they could easily clean at Bournemouth and not clean at Everton. They could easily not clean them both. They're not fantastic fixtures. But I just think you've got to buy a ticket somewhere, and it's fine if you want to buy a ticket for the attackers as well. Gakpo, for example, could easily play both. Bournemouth are a good defensive team. Everton are probably going to be pretty good defensively. They're both away. So you're buying a ticket and you're choosing where you're buying it. But there is a question of how greedy people want to get, because it's just that extra transfer. I say the word greedy for want of a better word, but, even me, for example, when I've got those players in, that's probably okay. But, I do quite like it for Everton, for example. You have to like that. Even for a Mikalenko or a defender, it's a double game week. Leicester at home is a very good fixture. I know Leicester have looked competent and decent, and then you've got Liverpool at home. You never know. I'm sure lots of people will do that. But again, you have to. It's not like a normal season where you're just sort of weighing up a transfer. You wouldn't hit for one of those sort of guys with those sort of fixtures, I suppose. But you're not just weighing up a transfer now because transfers are so valuable. So I guess we'll have a better idea in terms of picture, in terms of how easy it is to build those transfers back up by 29, because there's a fair gap there, isn't there?
I think the simple way of putting it, I would anyway, is that I know a lot of people like to operate on the principle that try and remove the weaknesses from your squad, that type of thing. And in my case, I look at the team and think, well, okay, if the weakest spots, it's okay to shift an Enzo to a McNeil, for example, if he was fully fit and playing 90 minutes and that sort of thing. It's even fine at a push to remove, one of your a cheap striker, for example, in that situation. I think it's less likely, to be honest with you, but and Pickford again, fine. But aside from that, I don't know, who it is. I mean, take you for example. With I know Eze hasn't got a terrific fixture that week, but in the broader sense, removing an asset like that who's not top tier, but also a very good player, is it really worth moving them on for an Everton asset? Well, probably not.
No. But what we should talk about though is the strikers, because it is still interesting. Again, that's more interesting in terms of spending, taking the risk on spending a transfer, because the dreaded, DCL definitely looks like a good pick if he's fit. They've got a new manager now. You never know how that's going to work with him, how it's going to work psychologically. Is he going to get the better of him? He missed some chat. He obviously missed again the other day, but he had a couple of, or at least one very good chance, didn't he? We've talked about Njai, who I think shout out to FPL Fran, who I think calls him NDIA or something, which is interesting. But maybe Fran's right, but I think it's Njai. But people sort of temporarily got a bit excited from because he took a penalty, didn't he? And he's such a great player, Njai, and he probably is a great penalty taker. But I'd imagine that DCL is actually on penalties. When he's on the pitch, again, it's not something I've really thought about, but I'm guessing that DCL's on penalties. DCL's actually a pretty good penalty taker, from what I remember. Can't remember his record. But again, 2 home games: Leicester at home, Liverpool at home, in a derby. So if he's the number 9 and he plays both games, that's a great pick. If you can make a nice, easy transfer, if you're selling. So what's João Pedro's got after that? He's got Chelsea, then he's got Southampton, Bournemouth, Fulham. Pedro's got some decent fixtures. Wood has got Fulham away, Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, City. So Wood's got bad fixtures. Obviously, the idea of selling Wood is terrifying and treacherous, and goes against all of my emotions and instincts. And we're not going to sell Isak. So there is a decision to make there. If you want to go for it, DCL in that double. A lot of Wood owners will do that move. A lot. DCL will have, if he's fit, he will have a very high ownership in that double game week. And it'll be pretty scary if you sort of put yourself in that position. You're sitting there with Wood, who it will be pretty scary, being loyal to Wood, who's got Brighton that week, or a decent team, and then goes into Fulham away, Newcastle, Arsenal, City, whilst other people have got a double game week DCL with 2 home games. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's it's hard, isn't it? Because the evidence that we have, I suppose, for most of us when we were watching Everton more closely, was perhaps when we owned McNeil or Calvert-Lewin, or both, if you were so minded, earlier in the season. And of course, McNeil was the guy who looked much more able right then. And we haven't seen it yet. So I think there's a few weeks to study this, and I certainly wouldn't be going in early. It's another one. Unfortunately, it's really quite annoying for people. You do really want to wait until 23, 24 before making any of these decisions. So it probably isn't going to be this week one to review. I did look up Calvert-Lewin's record, by the way. As far as I can tell, 8 penalties scored in his career and 1 missed. So it's not bad. He hasn't actually had that many. It's quite. I don't think Everton are a team that win many penalties, are they? They are one of those kinds.
But the other thing, thinking about it, again, we've not seen anything of Moyes yet, but Moyes was always. I know he's. You had more experience with Moyes at West Ham, but I always remember at United, he was like, I remember the stories from like Ferdinand and the players there at the time, and he literally said like he came into training and basically what he was saying was, we need to get the ball out wide more and get it into the box. And I just thought, for fuck's sake, this is what we've got at Man United. And it was like the Fellaini days, but it was a bit like that when he was first at Everton. And we don't know what approach he's really going to take, because he can be, Everton fans will tell you, they'll say he played very attacking football, or at least attacking football, I guess it would be mixed from West Ham fans. But what I'm saying is we don't really know if he's sort of goes for a little bit, and it's a lot of this getting out wide to wingers and getting crosses in. It could be perfect for DCL.
Could be, yeah. We didn't see an awful lot of that at West Ham, if I'm honest with you, because when I think back to. Actually, because the other day, as you know, every now and again, Danny, to give myself a treat, I watch compilations of Andy Carroll goals because, as you know, I just like a big bloke doing a bullet header at the back post type thing. But that was a little before, on the whole, before Moyes' kind of time. And during the time Moyes was in charge, there wasn't a great deal of kind of searching for the target man up front in the same kind of way. There's a lot of, as you can imagine, pacey counter-attacking football. I think the other thing, by the way, is that people always, when in conversations I've had, people seem to overestimate how defensive a manager Moyes is, at least based on the West Ham experience we had. Because, last season, as I kept reminding people when we decided to get rid of him, obviously it didn't work out straight away. But conceding 5 at Fulham, conceding 5 at Crystal Palace, getting spanked 6-0 at home to Arsenal. You can say he's defensive, but I don't think that really kind of summarizes him exactly. It'd be a watching brief.
At least for a large period, you did have that sort of profile of players, though, that it was never really going to be sort of a 4-4-2 getting out wide, was it? With Antonio up front and kind of, Bowen and whoever else you had, the Kudus types, and your Souček and your double. It was kind of obvious 4-2-3-1 for a while, wasn't it?
Yeah, the players essentially were too good for that, whereas perhaps not so much the problem at Everton. To be honest, I'm sure I'm going to avoid pelters for that. Okay, I think we can probably move on from this one. But in terms of planning for now, as you say, just being mindful of transfers is probably the best approach. I'm trying to think when we find out about the permutations that are going on there, but it's certainly not this week. Yeah.
I mean, you've still got the 29 slide on the screen, haven't we? I don't know if we were going to go past that. We haven't really talked about 29, but I know we mentioned it last time. But I'm still working on the basis, roughly, that Palace and Newcastle blank.
Yep.
And that maybe probably Liverpool do. I know it's only slightly because they lost 1-0, but they're slight favourites. Obviously, this is an old picture, but 62% favourites. So again, I don't know if we're repeating stuff from last time, but I think it's still more of an option for many than to have a choice. Really, there's a long time till 29, but a choice between whether you free hit or just go through the transfers. Because for me, it depends where you've got value tied up and stuff, but. It could be relatively easy for me to. Oh, you need to get the door, don't you? I can talk. Yeah, I'll just carry on solo, talking to myself, and maybe I'll look at the screen while I'm doing it. But it should be relatively easy for me. Is what I'm thinking is to just have 3 non-playing players on the bench potentially. Whether keep the ones who've got the most value tied up. So Salah and Isak and. I don't know, maybe Hall or whatever, but if I can easily sell, I've got Ion Eze, so a lot of people have got Palace players. Eze will be gone for me by then anyway, probably to Bumo. And who else is there? And obviously I've got, so a lot of people will own Trent, but a lot of people won't have money tied up in Trent. I don't have money tied up in Trent. I've had him for ages, so he's gone up and down. I think I've maybe got 0.1. So in other words, if you're, you don't want a free hit in 29 and you want a wild card in 30, and I know this is really obvious, but for me, it should be relatively easy if you've got enough transfers to do that and just bench the likes of Isak, Salah, Hall, or whatever I'm missing. You can tell me, Rich, but sell your Palace midfielders, sell Trent. So anyway, there's choices. Obviously, you find to free hit, and like we said before, Rich, you've not just got Fernandez now. You've also got Ahmad that really jumps out in the fixtures that we do have to easily get to.
Yeah, I'm sure you've already said something along these lines, but I don't. I want to try and avoid, I think, using the free hit in 29 myself. I don't especially like the permutations afterwards,
same.
but I prefer holding it to probably 34, although I'm sure we'll learn more about it in kind of coming weeks. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be too difficult. I mean, you've got more stacked up than me, so it might be a bit easier for you. But I think that's the plan at the moment, and I'm working on similar basis to you. A little bit, kind of just keeping my fingers crossed a little bit that I might get something about the manoeuvring of that Fulham Spurs fixture, and getting Jimenez or Robinson in your case, something like that. But we'll see how that affects. I know there is a very, very slim chance of it dropping into a week sooner to where we are now. 25, I think, but
25, yeah, but it's probably
doesn't
not going to
seem
happen.
likely, does it? Yeah. I suppose captaincy. Sorry, no, well, not captaincy. Actually, it's just fixtures more generally. I've got some pretty difficult decisions to make this week, so actually this will be quite interesting. The top one there, how do you see that going? I think this is quite an interesting one because a lot of people have got quite strong defensive option this week. They might have a choice between like a Robinson and a Hall. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's so tight, isn't it? It's so tight between them. And it could be, it could take me, for example, I've got Hall and Robinson and Munoz. Anything could happen, and there's hardly anything in it. Bournemouth are a very good team. They're a very good attack. Yeah, I do think they obviously played well at Chelsea. I think they were a little bit fortunate, not fortunate, but they got a penalty. They got a penalty, and then an absolutely ridiculous finish from Semenyo from not a great chance of a position. Newcastle have been brilliant at home, but they did concede a couple of really, really good chances, didn't they, in the last game? Even against Wolves, at the end. Strand Larsen missed an absolute sitter again. So I think Newcastle, but Newcastle as well. They beat. I know it was the cup, but they beat Arsenal 2-0. So you think it depends sort of how they show up and how they actually view Bournemouth and how they approach the game, because a team beating Arsenal 2-0 in a cup semi-final. Even I know Arsenal have got loads of injuries and obviously it's not like full strength Arsenal or anything, but that's still really impressive. So I think that's why I'll be sort of likely backing Hall, just because Newcastle are just very capable of that. I think Newcastle will win the game. I think it's just whether it's a sort of Bournemouth are a very good team, so maybe I'm doing them a little bit of a disservice. Bournemouth have definitely got a chance of getting something from this game, but I would imagine you see it sort of a 2-1, maybe 2-1 Newcastle, and I'll be hoping it's more like 2-0.
Yeah, that's kind of how I think there's a pretty good chance, isn't there, of Bournemouth scoring realistically, but but again, no striker, as you know, they're still working out that system. The goals, as you say, Semenyo's finish was one of those ones that, let's be honest with you, from him 8 or 9 times out of 10, it will hit the outside of the post or hit the side netting or something. So yeah, not to kind of diminish him rather. But yeah, it's a tricky one. That decision, Munoz, Robinson, Hall, is a very difficult one this week.
Yeah, so go on. How do you rank them? How do you rank them? Give us your 1, 2, 3.
No, we're doing that.
Yeah, you've got to do it.
Well,
and I will talk through fixtures as well anyway. But how do you rank them right now before we talk about it?
No, it's a good question. I think I'm just trying to remember what I've got in my team at the moment. So I'm starting Gabriel, playing Trent, and I've got Milenkovic, haven't I? Yeah.
Yeah, you don't. So you're impartial, really, aren't you? Because you're
relatively so. Well, put it this way: on my bench, I've got Hall ahead of Munoz at the moment. So yeah. As for Robinson, probably I'd put him ahead of Munoz, but yeah, just slightly behind Hall.
Okay, so that's where I've got it as well at the moment. But obviously, it's just kind of crazy. You need to talk us.
That's
You know,
ridiculous.
you need to talk to us about West Ham when we get there.
Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah, Brentford, Liverpool is Brentford are a really good team. I feel like it's like it's a week where I can at least justify, regardless of whether he gets another brace or another 20 points, I can actually justify not owning Burmo this week.
Yeah, Brian.
And it's such a breather. Yeah. Even if he scores, because at least he's playing Liverpool. But yeah, Brentford are really good. I think I expect Liverpool to just do what they've been doing and just continue to be so ruthless and clinical and calculated. I think they'll they got a draw at Forest. I think they'll be a bit frustrated because I think they wanted to prove a point and they were the better team. But it's a massive game for Liverpool. So anyway, I don't think it's that. I expect Liverpool to score at least 2 goals.
Yeah.
And naturally expect a lot of that to go through Salah.
I have to say again, one of the decisions last week was on strikers for me anyway, personally, and it's another one that I honestly was, it was one of those ones where I hovered over the Wissa button for and I left it quite late, and then just decided to give myself the extra flexibility that Jimenez offered, and well, what can you do? But he again looks really good. I always feel like Brentford are going to score at home very hard. That's another thing this week. I've seen 1 or 2 people benching Trent. I know you wouldn't advise that, but it's that close, isn't it, across the board this week? Very, very difficult. But again, yeah,
a lot of people are benching Trent. I think
yeah,
which I love. But he's been a frustrating own, so it'll probably pay off for them. And in some ways, I admire that. That sort of dispassionate approach. Because I just would never bench Trent. But I also think Trent's been really good recently. A lot better than is being perceived. Obviously, he had an absolute stinker against United. But he really is like their sort of creative hub. They don't look the same without him. His passing's been superb. Even against Forest, that cross that he did at the end was just unbelievable. It could have easily ended up in a goal. I think he's really good, and he could have easily had a lot more points than he's got. So yeah. But like you say, you'd be surprised if Liverpool clean that game, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would. Yeah, that's it's a tricky one. I also think a lot of people were considering bringing one in this week because obviously they might have a gap, something like the Gakpo spot, and that sort of thing. I know that there are some attacking returns in there. I still would prefer to leave it, even one more week personally. But I can say I think it seems pretty likely that they'll score 2, possibly 3 there. The Fulham one, by the way, I just have to talk about it very briefly. Those are Wobie goals and Robinson assists. My God, I know that you punched the air at the dropped Robinson bonus point from your bench.
I know. Yeah, that was a relief. Jesus, because again, I had to make the choice between Robinson, Munoz, and Hall. Obviously, I benched the guy who concedes 3 goals because I expected West Ham to score and play well, and they did, and he got the 2 jammiest assists in history. So it was annoying, but I was content in the end because Newcastle and Palace both probably should have conceded. Well, in fact, both should have conceded. So I ended up getting 2 cleans. But yeah, I don't know if you saw it, actually. I just got to mention it because I was stuck in my head about Iwobi all week. But I was watching. I've been watching some of Nick Triglitz's videos recently because they're quite they are entertaining to watch. I quite like watching them. But it was so funny. I don't think I've told you this actually, but he did this video where he decided to do a live check of the scores. Basically, it wasn't like a match of the day challenge. He'd just been out all day, so he decided to just like put on it was like some random betting website and just check all the scores. And he was really nervous, because he does really care about the game. And he was like, you could see he was like, nervous and excited and like, oh my God, what am I going to see? And he got so happy because he got, I think he captain Palmer and got 10 points, and I think he had Chris Wood or something like that, and he had Robinson, and he was like really buzzing, well excited. But for like 5 weeks, he's had Iwobi in his team, and he's been saying, "Oh, he's like swearing all the time. Fucking Iwobi's done nothing for me. He's been useless," and he's slagging him off every week, and he's been so annoyed. And he eventually, like, really reluctantly sold him this week. And his face when he goes to the Fulham page, and the moment you see that he registers that it's Iwobi who's got the brace, it's just pure rage. And he's just like, "Oh my, you've got to see it." It goes on for about 2 minutes. So funny. So anyway, yeah. And Adam, our friend Adam had Iwobi as well, you know.
Actually, just on this very quickly, because again, our friend Stu, Pep Talk, if he might be watching this later on, he thinks it was a skill, obviously, from Iwobi, no doubt.
Yeah.
But he, by the way, so he was annoyed because his planned move that someone had put him off this week was to do Iwobi to Ahmad, and he was like, "Oh, so annoying."
Oh my god. That's Pep not coming on for a while.
I did tell him about the kind of Passion of the Christ meme. I said, "You've just done it there."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, it's me sitting here having sold all these players with the returns for blanks and such. But
yeah,
just very quickly on, obviously Jimenez as well, pretty good up. He got 90 midweek, which is, I think, broadly a good thing. It's always hard to tell for sure, isn't it? But and Muniz has obviously been linked to a few other clubs, so that's quite an interesting one to keep an eye on, including West Ham actually. Speaking of which, we'll talk about them now. And I was pretty impressed with I mean, it's true it could have been a game that went the other way, the West Ham Fulham game. There's no doubt about it. But they were pressing from the front. They were high energy, very positive. Defense still looks vulnerable. That's not going to change anytime soon. But I think it's very difficult to imagine there'll be many sides coming up that West Ham won't score against. I know that they lack a striker, but there's just enough positivity and energy and high pressing and all the rest of it. And you know, when even players like Cresswell and Ings are doing a reasonable job when they come on the pitch, you know that the managers got into the club and had a good go. So very positive. Paquetá, by the way, looks like a different player at the moment again. He's gone back to his old self. And as you know, he was, I mean, when we had conversations before, I would say he's comfortably our best player when we would have had a conversation a year ago. And he's been off it for a long time since the betting scandal. But he looks really quite decent again. I don't know whether he's he's one of those kind of players in a double game week. You'd be on him, you know, but obviously not really for regular stuff for now.
We said
but
this,
I think we're good.
We said it on the last pod, didn't we? I think I was saying that he's going to be, because I just picked him up in draft, and I was very pleased that Potter had taken over because we said,
of course he did.
Yeah, because obviously, you know, he strikes me as the new Pascal Gross, but even better, you know, and even potentially more advanced. It's like Pascal Gross, but obviously an even better footballer and on penalties.
Yeah.
And actually, that's, you know, again, it's just, I don't know if and when that becomes interesting. I'm just looking at West Ham's fixtures now.
Yeah.
I don't want to get excited or carried away with the fact, you know, we've just seen one thing, but I've got a lot of confidence in Potter.
Yeah.
What a brilliant manager he is. And you know that, and that's why I was kind of confident that they were going to score, but also concede, because you know that he's not approaching the games to go, we're going to be a good attack, or he's not approaching it to say, we're going to make it shore up on the defense. What he does is he's going to say, we're going to play my style, and we're going to play football. And I didn't really see much of the West Ham game or any of it really, but I saw a couple of highlights. But that was it, Souček's goal, where it was just that build up, and it was like, that build up was just Potter there. Where it was just one touch football. The opposition just watched as, you know, 10 passes occurred, and then he scored. But that is interesting for Keteris if he's playing, and he doesn't even need to play in the 9. He just needs to play, not in the 9 or the false 9 or whatever he was doing, but he just needs to play in that front 3. But
well, the other thing, there's a few factors, aren't there? So obviously no striker is going to be in place holding that spot for at least for the next few weeks. You know, we know that for sure. Somerville's out for probably a few more weeks, I would assume. So there's you know, he's definitely going to be part of the front because he can drop in, but he's going to be there in an attacking role for a while, one would think. And he's the kind of, again, if his confidence is up, he's one of, I mean, I know no one tends to agree with this, but he he looked like the kind of player who could have got into any Premier League side about a year ago. He hasn't for the last year. He barely looked like he belonged in the West Ham team. So yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on. But yeah, I don't hold out a great deal of hope for a Crystal Palace clean sheet, if I'm honest. I mean, Glasner's a smart guy. I'm sure he'll keep the worst of it at bay. But that's why Munoz is. Obviously, he can still do anything, can't he? It's ridiculous. But he's probably one of the easier benches for me at the moment, which will say everything about the situation.
Okay, good. That's good to know, and that's what I guess people want to know.
That said, Danny. That said, the I mean, if there is a vulnerability, it's that spot. Off the kind of there's a gnawing gap between Emerson and Kilman at the worst of times. So at the best of times, sorry. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's in at the back post.
Okay.
So yeah, but you have to play on clean sheets on the whole, don't you? So
yeah, exactly. Neil's got Ings starting. Just FYI, if you're interested. Neil's predicting Ings start and Paqueta on the right. I don't know what you think about that.
He obviously thinks that Kudos is not playing.
No, he's got Kudus in the 10. So I don't know if he's just mixing up the players in the order there. I don't know if he's done that on purpose, but he's just got Ings. He's got Paqueta, Kudus. He's got Sawyer, Kudus, and Paqueta behind Ings.
Okay. Probably Kudos right, Paqueta left in that case.
Because did you pick up Ings in draft? Was it you who got him? Because I know he's not available now. Or was it?
No, I don't think so. No. Cool. I've only got Wan-Bissaka.
Nice.
Well, it could be worse, right? It's not a bad game.
Wan-Bissaka on the other side, then that would be a lot easier for us to make that decision on Munoz.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Actually, yeah. Oh God, yeah. Well, he does sometimes.
He does sometimes.
That, but yeah, you can't rely on that.
Usually for like Salah and Saka. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Actually, that would have been ideal, but never mind. I find the next game to be quite frustrating, actually, because you're probably like me. I've got both. I've got two Arsenal again at the back, and I could easily see this being a game that shoots us down a bit because there's going to be someone off of our benches that is going to return this week, whilst Raya continues to do. Again, you have to play him, but
yeah, it's just that's what it's like again. Like I think we just looked at Pep's team, didn't we? Didn't he have Gabriel benched, which is something again that I'm incapable of, and I would never bench Gabriel because I think he's the best. Him and Trent are the best defenders in the game. But it's one of those players you can't. It's too scary to bench him because he's just so good in the air. He's so good at attacking, so good from set pieces. So like you just can't bench him. But again, this will be really tight. We've been unfortunate Arsenal because they've been the best defense recently. They probably are. Well, they've been the best defense in the league for, what's probably approaching 2 years or a year and a half. Other teams have gone better and worse, and Liverpool looked as good for a little bit, and if not, but it was never really. Arsenal the best defense in the league. And I know the problem is they've got a lot of injuries, which has changed their sort of. Saka's a big blow for them defensively, which is said all the time. But they've basically conceded like one big chance, or they've basically hardly conceded anything, and they've conceded one goal in most of the last games. And this looks like going the same way. It kind of depends what Villa are like and how they turn up, because I think just that combination of Rodgers and Watkins is just really dangerous against anyone. And just Watkins generally on his own is just really dangerous against anyone. I was surprised, by the way. I know you sold him and there wasn't anything wrong with selling because he certainly was a min's risk, but I was surprised, and I said this to you beforehand, didn't I, that all the Villa predictors, beware of fans, it was close, but they all had Duran starting. I was like,
yeah.
I said to you, this Watkins is starting. I mean, he's not. He played well, and he played well in those two games anyway. And he's just
definitely.
So there's no way they were gonna drop Watkins for Duran, who's just got a red card, who had a few good games before that. Anyway, so I can see this being. I think it's going to be 2-1 to Arsenal if I was putting my money on it, but I could see it being. I could see Arsenal cleaning. I could see it being 1-0 or 2-0 as well.
I've seen plenty of people, by the way, play Fabianski over Raya this week.
Yeah, and people have been doing experimenting with that a lot, haven't they? But
So our friend Phil Frenchy again actually did that earlier, so just going to mention him again. Good evening to you.
Baker did it last week, I think. I mean, it's you know, I don't hate it, but no.
Well,
No.
Play your own way and all the kind of things that people say. So on to Sunday. Everton Spurs is a funny one because again, I think virtually nil FPL interest at the moment. I don't know whether that's fair. It's more of a kind of scouting mission, isn't it? But Spurs do have a nice. And they've got Southampton next week, or is it? They've got a good game next week. I know that much. And I know you had interest in Solanke a while back, but I'm guessing for now we can probably mostly skip on that one, or do you have anything to say?
Yeah, they've got Leicester at home. I mean, I've always been flirting with Solanke.
That man.
But yeah, he's just not doing enough, and there isn't a spare place in my team. But he's a great player and a good striker. But yeah, that's a real tester for Spurs. That because it's a massive game, they're in trouble. That
there is that. Yeah,
they've just lost so many games. They've lost more games than Ipswich, now, this season. But it's just a massive game. It's a stinker going to David Moyes at home.
Yeah.
Son always still falls to pieces when he goes to Goodison. He's ever since that tackle happened, for some reason he just can't play there. But yeah, no interest from an FPL perspective. I reckon it's going to be tight, real tight. I reckon it'll be, again, if I keep saying 2-1 for games, don't I? But I can see that being 1-1 or 1-2.
Yeah, I think a score draw there for me. Man, this is quite a relevant game. Let's be honest. For a lot of people benching João Pedro, a lot of people just bought in Ahmad. A lot of people a little bit. Well, broadly, the kind of people who bought Bruno are not wobbly on Bruno, but I don't know. There is a bit of a debate about that. We did have a question about Bruno captaincy this week. I think. I don't know whether really that's going to be too popular. But do you see that game? Okay, the one thing I will say before I hand over to Danny on this, because he's the Manchester man, is that ultimately it feels to me like this next stretch of fixtures was, I feel, just as solid on Bruno with the Brighton fixture, for example, than I do with the Southampton fixture. I just think Southampton fixture was the one where you were likely to get those greater kind of pockets of space where where a pacey person can run through, that kind of thing, and obviously that suits Ahmad pretty well. I know that's easy to say that now, but Bruno hopefully just as good for the next few. You feel fairly solid on that, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, I feel solid on Bruno. It's another one of those where it's a bit frustrating if he's not really getting the points and when are they going to come and blah blah blah. But he's a solid pick. He's a great pick. He still is. For now, he still is a better pick than Ahmad, but obviously he's more expensive. But yeah, it's a weird game because it's sort of a weird one whereby, because they're both pretty good teams. I know that non-United fans will be like, "No, United are crap," but I think because they're both pretty good teams, they're both teams that actually they've been performing better against good teams. So I kind of like it for both Brighton and United players, actually. So I don't know what's going to happen in this game. Because we were awful, obviously, against Southampton for the first 70 minutes. Conceded so many chances, so we didn't look good defensively all of a sudden, even though we looked really good defensively against the likes of Arsenal and Liverpool and so on. We're just so in transition as a team, and we just don't know who's going to play. I mean, Ugarte and Mainu being hauled off, almost an example made of them, because they obviously just weren't doing what they were told after 50 minutes. Collier came on and he's been brilliant every time he comes on. Looks like a real player, actually. Yeah. He, based on what I've seen recently, and I don't know about sort of the long-term stuff, but he should be playing at the moment because he looks class act in midfield, and I'd like to see him play because it's a bit like having a sort of Carricky type player in there who just suddenly sort of springs a bit of class and seems to choose the right passes and be calm on the ball and sort of play progressive passes when needed and so on. Anyway, like you said, I quite like it for Bruno. I still like it for Ahmad because he's an amazing player. We just don't know what's going to happen with Ahmad because he could just be a superstar, and he has sort of been a superstar all his life in a way. He's just sort of a late developer. He could just carry on being ridiculous. I don't know if he'll play right wing back or front three because that's a little bit of this is a sort of bit between the two because I think in those sort of Southampton fixtures, that's what his aim is and should be at the moment is to play Garnacho and Fernandes in the front three and then Ahmad a right wing back. This game, I don't know because it's a bit in between, but he'll certainly play because you can't drop Ahmad. My guess would be that he'll play right wing back just I think because I don't think it's a good time to drop Garnacho and Fernandes will play the front three. But yeah, I also quite like it for João Pedro. I mean, just because of how bad, I don't know what to think about Brighton. I don't know. Obviously, Brighton have got. You expect Welbeck to play up front with Pedro, which as Pedro has been waiting for ages. And they've been good against good teams. So, how do you see it going?
I think it feels to me like a 2-1, 2-2 type of game. Really, I very much expect both teams to score. Could easily see it, one goal either way, possibly. But yeah, I think I would feel relatively confident playing attackers from either side. The next one, I think there's a lot of investment in because obviously Nottingham Forest, Southampton, bit of a trickier run for Forest, sort of anyway coming up, but broadly they're long-term hold kind of picks, aren't they? On the whole, we talked a little bit about Chris Wood captaincy already, so I can probably skip that. But I don't know, it feels to me like a fairly solid 2-3-0 win would be my guess.
Yeah, reasonable. I mean, but we shouldn't take it away from Southampton how good they were against us.
No, they were, especially first half.
Yeah, they're a weird team. They seem to play well, sort of every now and again. Sometimes they were diabolical the other week when they lost 5-0, whatever it was. I mean, that was just like one kind of really puzzlingly bad. But then they've been good at other times. But yeah, I mean, you have to expect a comfortable Forest win.
More or less going to skip through City Ipswich game because I don't think many people have a great deal of interest there. They've looked a little brighter, I suppose, but I think I don't know. Probably a kind of couple of goals to City. That one, I think, probably a 2-0, 2-1, something like that.
Yeah, shout out to Ivan, our friend, who's obviously an Ipswich fan. So hopefully Ipswich win.
But, absolutely. There's been a few people getting in on Savio. Is it Savinho, isn't it? Actually, genuinely haven't really ever looked at his name. And finally, Chelsea Wolves. That's a really frustrating one because again, I could easily get burnt by the missed opportunity of Palmer captaincy and of course Enzo. I actually think again, if everyone was fit and playing those kind of roles, I would have been quite keen to play him this week. But
yeah, same.
Yeah.
I think if I knew, it's really close. I don't think we do know now. But if Lavia was fit, if they were all, like you say, if they're all fit, I think if I knew that Lavia was playing and that Enzo was likely to play an advanced role and that Enzo was definitely playing, having said all that about João Pedro and stuff, I think I'd probably go for it and play Enzo in that game. But now,
it's frustrating because I was just starting to talk myself around. I suspect you would have done this straight away anyway. But with a Sarr versus Enzo decision, if I wasn't bench boosting, which I obviously won't now, I suspect. Yeah, that was going that way.
Yeah, tough. That's a tough one. Yeah.
Speaking of which, perhaps we can go on to this because we did this the other week, didn't we? Where we wanted to have a quick traitors chat, and it ended up being about 5 minutes before.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. Let's get to that then.
Let's whip through our teams. You can. There's plenty of help that you can give me here, Danny. To be honest with you, as you know. So actually, do you know what? I don't know whether I'm going to get round to putting this up for podcast, to be honest with you, because we've only got until the morning, haven't we? So that might not happen. But yeah, for anyone listening and can't be asked to look, Raya, Milenkovic, Alexander-Arnold, Gabriel, Sarr, Palmer, Salah captain, Bruno, Wood, Raul, and Isak. And on the bench, as you can probably hear, pretty strong. Fabianski, Hall, Munoz, and Enzo. Ugh. It's not a decision you want to make there. So I was actually, with some interest considering that for a bench boost because I really do like the idea of freeing myself up for clean air in the post 29 period. I know not everyone would go like this, but it's one of those rare weeks where everyone looked like they were going to be fit and ready, and it seemed like a good enough decision to consider it.
Yeah,
Any thoughts?
yeah, you can't do it now.
No transfers this week. It's almost impossible that I'll make a transfer.
Okay. So yeah, you can't bench boost now because it's just too risky. It's already a risk when you've got single
2
games.
million in the bank, by the way. So there was a tiny bit of me with them when I heard Sarr, because he's going to move on to Buemo anyway. But then I don't think I want to cause myself another headache.
Yeah, I've got Eze and he'll be going on to Buemo as well. But I don't know if it'll be next week or the week after. But
oh yeah.
You just got to decide. Obviously, because I guess with what they said about Sarr, with a sort of question mark in the type of injury that was said, I guess it's a play or don't play at all. I don't think he'll. I can't see how.
You think so? Really?
Well, if they said he was a question mark, wasn't an ankle mentioned or something?
No.
Or was that? I'm getting mixed up with Chelsea, am I?
You are, yeah.
Something. Oh.
No, he's a tight hamstring.
Oh, okay, right, okay. Okay.
I know,
so
it's a pain, isn't it?
yeah. Like I say, Neil's got Kamada starting, so I guess just trying to be really sensible. You just play Hall over Sarr.
Yeah. It's a frustrating one because, as I say, I do broadly expect. I don't know, what would I give? I would probably give Newcastle something around 35-40%, which maybe not even that, but it's pretty good. I'd broadly be happy to play any of these players, but it's just Munoz. I do expect West Ham to concede, obviously higher attacking threat than Hall, just about. And then you got the Enzo thing. Enzo's tricky because, of course, he can't hurt me. I think it's fair to say. No, he's not particularly well owned anymore, is he? But I just saw that as quite a decent opportunity to use him. But with the Lavia thing, that just again, these are all things that ultimately are very difficult to control. The only thing I can control here is by moving Hall in for Sarr, and then all of the players on the bench are the uncontrollable factors, aren't they? Some of them will screw me. I was going to say something else, but then I remember we were live. Smash likes and subscribes, by the way. God, it's been an hour 21, Danny, and I haven't said that.
Oh, yeah.
It's pathetic. So we should probably spend the rest of the stream just saying smash like and subscribe. Tell your granny. Just shout out the window. Post it on Snapchat or whatever it is. I don't actually know what that is, but do that stuff. But yeah, okay. So that's in my position, Danny. You think you would go with the knowns? You would lock in a bit of Hall.
Yeah, I think you've got. That's what I would do. I think you just got to be ruthless and go. What's the point in risking Sarr? I don't know. If I like I said, you think you might get a cameo. So,
well, it's just. With the tight turnaround and a slight hamstring issue, it's one of those ones where perhaps they might bring him on if they feel like they're chasing a game. It's that kind of scenario. That would be how I would read it. But I think Palace will score. I'm not particularly concerned about that. And so, for you as an Eze owner, it's an easy decision, really. It's tricky because this might have been. You're going to hate me for saying this. But this might have been a week where I would have just about said my side was stronger this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But now with this, it's not anymore. It's really annoying. Just that maybe just 1 week.
Well, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. You have to say Raul is a good chunk ahead of Pedro this week, probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty close, pretty even Stevens. But yeah, you just
very, very diplomatic of you. Thank you very much.
That's all right. But yeah, I would do that, but then I'd still be confused about bench order as I am with my own team. So you'd have to decide on bench order there.
Oh, that's a good point. Actually, I hadn't really. Just out of interest, this is purely for posterity. It's a bit like when they show people like the quiz questions. You want to have a look at the answer, even though they've taken the money. Like a limitless win or whatever. It's like, oh, here's what you could have won. if everyone had been fine, bench boost?
Well, I've got very similar.
Because yours is maybe just as strong, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
even, yeah.
I basically came to the conclusion that no, is what I came to. I just thought, yeah.
I'll
We
be
don't
honest with you, I
know what it's
stumbled
gonna,
into this a bit,
we don't
really.
know. Yeah, we don't know what it's going to look like yet with, in 33 and 36. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but what we do know is it should be relatively easy to get, fingers crossed, to get, a good few players out with doubles. But I've never had much luck with the bench boost. The big thing, I suppose, is that's my point, is that in some other seasons it's been more difficult to navigate a bench boost without having to dedicate transfers to it and time and so on. A lot of people in the past, a lot of kind of analytics managers and so on. I hate using that term because we're all analytics managers as well. But there's a lot of people have saved the wild card until say game week 36 and then bench boost in 37. I don't like doing that. I like to get more out of the wild card. I don't like to use it that late. So there's been seasons gone by where it's been more of a case of like the bench boost has been optimal in 36 or 37 sort of thing, and you wild carding in 29 or 30 or even earlier, and that's when it becomes a bit problematic because it's just you don't want to spend loads of transfers and shape your whole team around getting that bench boost. And in which case, I'd have been much more open to doing a bench boost with a bench like this. Whereas, I don't know, I just think this season, because we've got, because at the moment as it stands, we don't need to worry about Haaland and we've got loads of money. This is the sort of bench you can have, except they can be players with double game weeks. And whether it's your bench boost in 33 or 36, it's relatively close to 30. So in other words, I just think it's not as difficult for us to get that double game week bench boost this time.
Yeah.
Which is why.
I do think, though, in the broader sense, and this is not really even about this season, but because of the timing at this time, when people use this kind of chip generally in the season, which is kind of early 30s to mid 30s, that type of thing, I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, if you think that you're only going to take a slight loss in points, let's say it was 15 versus 20. I know that that's picking numbers out of the air. I don't mind that. I don't mind the bet of 5 points so that I've cleaned up my planning process for later, that type of thing. That would be fine for me if we knew, but as you say, we don't know. So it's it is a sort of moot conversation, you might say, but nevertheless, anyway, that's probably a ship that has sailed, and I'm relying on defenders to do me the damage. Great. There you are, flashing your little chip badge at the top as well there.
There I am. Yeah.
So you've got a few tricky decisions as well, but again, it's slightly more clear cut for you. I think I can see why you've done what you've done. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've landed here now. So I've landed here in terms of the starting 11, but obviously it could be pain. Bench order, I'm not entirely set on. I think it will. Yeah, it's tough now with Enzo, isn't it? I'm not sure because he could be first sub or last sub. I just need to decide on whether I think he's gonna. Well, his risk of a cameo, I suppose, because I actually really quite like the fixture for him.
Yeah.
So that's actually could be a painful one. I think I might
There's
just
no
go
easy way of judging, is there? So, I mean, I
No.
know you don't have Saar, but if, for example, judging which of those two is more likely to be fine, I think if I had to put money on it, I would say Enzo is more likely to be fine than Saar. But I've got very little to base that on. But anyway, that's not your decision. Personally, by the way, for what it's worth, I think I would just, given the quality that you have there, I think I would just bump Robinson up one.
Would you?
Oh, I don't. It's horrible. It's so hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was just erring towards maybe rolling the dice on Enzo, just given the Monday night fixture, and I think it could be
Actually, so you're fine except for a slight doubt on Palmer, right?
Yeah.
So really, there's not a great deal of chance that that's going to happen anyway. maybe you should do it. It's quite exciting.
Yeah, to be honest, I hadn't really I've not in my mind. I'm just thinking Palmer's going to be fine, so I hadn't really considered the fact that he might actually not play. I need to think about this tonight, so I'm not sure about Ben Shorter yet.
I think I'd be tempted. I think you're okay with. I think the Munoz decision is fine. I say that now. I just can't. It's very unlikely that he's going to get both a clean sheet and an attacking return. That's something anyway. Whereas Robinson, it's possible we could get both, right? And Hall, it's possible we could get both. I think it's unlikely with Munoz. So,
yeah,
so that makes it a little easier.
Yeah, it's just at the same time, weirdly, I mean, not in terms of Hall, but I think Munoz has got a higher ceiling than Robinson probably this week, just because he can score.
Mikey's our good friend Mikey is in the chat. Evening, Mikey. We know Sarr trained, but we have had this discussion. We don't know when those pictures were released, and we don't exactly know whether those comments follow on from that training session or not. So there's still a little bit of a about that one. It's a bit tricky, but hopefully we'll find out a bit more beforehand. I think I'm inclined to not take the risk at the moment, but we'll see. But yeah, okay, we'll be interested to see what you do. But captaincy is sorted now, unfortunately, probably anyway. Yeah.
I'm just looking at Neil's team as well, and just out of interest, he's updated Chelsea, so he's got Palmer starting, Fernandes starting.
Oh, really?
James, I mean, he's only guessing like the rest of us, but that's probably what I would think as well. I might just roll the dice. Yeah. Okay.
Would you play Enzo over Hall then in my situation?
Yeah,
I know this is the problem.
That is tough, actually.
It's easier to be brave when
that is tough.
Because with Palmer versus Enzo, you're like, well, Palmer's probably fine. But if it's a choice between Sarr, Enzo, and Hall,
it's tough. I'd be tempted to. I like Enzo as he's become a differential. So I'm going to probably leave him first. So I'd be tempted with Enzo. But that's where I am at the moment. So we'll see.
Okay. And finally, by the way, if you have, the Friday episode of this will happen in about 35 minutes on my laptop. So if you haven't caught up to the end of yesterday's Traitors, which is Thursday evening, you can back out brief. Actually, no, do you know what? We haven't even done our questions yet, have we?
Well, let's go on to this quickly because we don't want it to be too long. But I think most of the questions we sort of answered. I know we had one from our friend Easy on the pod, and he talked about Hall, Munoz, Pedro. We've answered that. Start Rogers or Kudus from FPL Daily. Simon asked a question.
Yeah, it's a good question because I know that there's been a little bit of uncertainty. About Kudus' fitness, and obviously he was fatigued. He was very tired. They were being asked to press from the front, that sort of thing. They're not used to it because they've been lazy for so long. But it's Kudus for me. I would definitely. I mean, I'm amazed that anyone owns him, but play Kudus.
Yeah, I go Kudus. I don't know if there's no quick questions in the chat, is there? Or should we just go on to?
No, I think obviously we had a Bruno captaincy question. I think realistically, I'd probably dodge that. And what was the other one? This was from our friend, that dude Morpheus, who actually sold Iwobi this week. For I don't remember who it was, but that was pretty unfortunate as well. There was one other question. Oh, Pep asked about whether we can, about the uncertainties of bench boost. But I think we've gone through that. It is very difficult. The reason why people hold it is because there is just that greater certainty with the double game weeks, etc. Although of course you have to allow the funds, and I think it will be tricky this year because of course some people will want to stash that 1.5 for a manager at the roughly same period of time. So there are some complications as well, but. Yeah, I think that's probably it, though. I think we're okay to swan into a little bit of tutorial chat before we go. Yes. Oh, of course. There's a new traitor in town. If for those of you who are interested, what are your thoughts? Are you pleased about that? Do you think she's good?
Oh yeah. I've forgotten about that actually. I'm trying to catch up in my head now. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I mean, she's obviously very good. Again, weirdly, it could be a mistake, couldn't it, by Mina, who's been
Yeah, I
so
was thinking the same.
because she's ruthless. She's turning around quickly, isn't she? She's already planning the. So you can see it playing out like that now. You can see this. If the traitors are going to win, it's going to be Charlotte. That's what it looks like now.
Yeah, this is what it is. Lovely Linda, just sitting
Yeah.
there. Yeah, oh, that's fine. I'll make the tea.
I mean, like, but I know this is like really obvious, but it became so apparent again last night. Is that, and I've always said this whenever I've watched traitors in the background, just like, well, it's not really a fair game, is it? The faithful aren't playing a fair game. You talked about the benefits of killing off bad faithful, which is fine, but the program has to go through the whole series.
Yeah, you
They have to
can't kill them all. You can never kill them. Yeah,
But it's just like it's not actually. That's what we've got to remember. It isn't a fair game.
they are the Grigori Rasputin of.
Yeah.
Game
So as soon as
shows.
she went down on her own like last night, or whenever it was, they got to recruit and murder. And the recruits are obviously they're going to say yes because it's that or go home. So it does. It's interesting because what does that mean for how you should really play the game? Is I suppose the idea. I suppose you shouldn't really change much of what we already think is the way to play the game. But you have to get to the end of the series. You don't have to. The objective is not to kill all the traitors as quickly as you can and find them all, because that won't happen because the program isn't built that way. So your objective is to get to the end of the program.
Do you know what this is? Curious because we haven't done this live very many times, but half of our meager followers dropped off as soon as we talked.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, there you go. At least we'll just have to timestamp this anyway.
Yeah,
Maybe.
no, I was just thinking that's pretty funny in many respects. Yeah, I'm still here, desperately hoping, of course, that someone will kill Joe soon, and that someone hopefully soon will kill Leanne, who seems to be quite an unpleasant person as far as I'm concerned. But
Oh God, Joe. I was thinking about you
yeah.
with Joe yesterday, and
Oh, just a terror. How? I mean, even with the bad I mean, I've been a teacher for a number of not now, but a fair bit of my career, and standards were never that bad that you had to give that man a job. Crumbs.
I know. I was thinking about it though, again, like in relation to like FPL, because that's what sort of came to my mind when Alex made that sort of slip up or whatever you want to call it. And I know what he was saying was fine, but obviously you don't give people. People are just looking for something to pick up on or something strange. But bad faithful are a little bit like bad sort of content creators or bad FPL managers in a way, because what they do is they create narratives from nothing and stories.
Do you want to name some names, Danny?
You know what I mean, though. It's like that's what it is. It's about creating a narrative and a story. And again, like they said it when it was Linda was gone, and they were like, or someone was gone, and they were like, oh God, I knew it from that face they pulled straight away. And it's like, but that I was never going to vote someone because of that. And it's like, well, why not? If you saw something that I can't remember what the example was, but it was like, well, that's not enough. I need a story. I need a narrative. I need a whole connection that I can make sense of in my head.
Yeah, you can't possibly do things based on tangible evidence. What a ridiculous idea!
Exactly.
Yeah.
No.
It's like the police using fingerprints or something.
Yeah.
But yes, okay, yeah, yeah. We'll check in on this a few times throughout. Yeah, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else to add for this, but yeah, probably not for now. But yes, do catch up on that, and we'll continue to drop in on it every week as and when we have our chats. I'll probably drop that one there then, Danny. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll swan off into the well, not the evening sunset, clearly, but we wish you good fortune ahead of game week 22. Hopefully by then I could have worked out my bench order, and same with Danny. Bit of a nightmare this week, to be honest with you. But yes, we shall be back shortly. And thank you very much for joining us for our live stream. It looks like we didn't have any wobbles this time, Danny, so I'm delighted from that point of view. The internet has held up, so it worked.
Your new internet, yeah, we should say. You've got new internet, it's much better.
I did, just for you loyal followers, of who I can see 3 are still watching. But do you know what? It's not
They're the
about the
real ones.
numbers.
They're the real ones.
We don't. Yeah, exactly. You hardcore. No doubt you've shared, smashed, liked, subscribed, and all the rest of it. You are proper folk. You are the kind of people we want to be in the trenches with, so to speak. I mean, not literally. I'm not really built for a war, but yeah, if we were, you know. Okay, well, Danny, I'll wish you good evening, and thank you for joining me again.
Nice one. Cheers, Rich.
Cool. See you all soon.